It's June 17th, 2021. This is Roqe. Her tale is a remarkable one of defying cultural and gender barriers to follow her dream. Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston is a champion athlete and a pioneer in women's wrestling. She came to the United States as an Iranian kid who could not speak English and did not fit in, but by her late teens she was competing for Team USA and would win the first world medal handed out in women's wrestling. She went on to win more championships and medals and coached Team USA to Olympic wrestling gold in 2016. Now she's the subject of a new biography, and Afsoon Johnston joins us for a feature interview. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 119 of Roqe. Hope you're keeping well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Salam, Dustana Aziz, Umidvar hastam ke khub va mizun bashin. Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston, Captain Reza.
Yes.
Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston. I'm very happy to have her on the program. Joining us from San Diego in a few minutes. Now, here's the thing. We bring people on this program. Sometimes they are big names.
That's right.
In the global Iranian community and beyond, right? So you've got your Farmaz Aslani, Maximini, right? And then there's people that some Iranians know, but that we hope will reach a larger audience in English. Mm-hmm. And then there's someone that I'm pretty sure most of our audience, our Iranian audience, does not know is Iranian.
Yeah.
And is actually one of our greatest athletes, I think, who needs to be celebrated. She is amazing, and her story is a riveting one.
That's right. And I wonder if she was a man, if Iranian would have known her, if she wasn't a woman.
I think, especially in kushti and wrestling, 100% that would be true.
Right? Yeah.
And I also think, there's the dual factor that wrestling as a sport has grown in the last 30 years, and her glory days, her prime was to be a pioneer in the beginning of those 30 years, in the 80s and 90s. So there's that. Even in the U.S., it's now the fastest growing sport for women. But she was winning medals 20 years ago, 30 years ago. She's now coaching the gold medal team in the USA. But the other thing is being a woman in wrestling. I guess wrestlers are superstars in Iran, right?
Big time.
Male wrestlers,
Male wrestlers are big time. They're as big as soccer players, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, they're huge.
And she's so amazing at this sport. And she's this fabulous person. I'm very much looking forward to this. Afsoon Johnston coming up in just a few moments. We are on an ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity, coming to you on roqemedia.com. roqemedia.com. You can go to our website where you can link to everything there, or you can head straight to one of our platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or CastBox. And if you like to see some visuals with Roqe, switch over to Instagram or YouTube right now. And if you like your Roqe descriptions and bulletins in English and Farsi, check us out on Telegram. All of those at Roqe Media. Hello to you officially, Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
Hello, the fabulous Jian.
Hi, Jian.
And how are you, Groovy Shaya?
I am good. How are you?
I'm well. You are looking and feeling more like Moses all the time.
10 comments I have.
That's right. Well, we know you had the stick. Now I've got to talk to Jian for a second, because I know now something. I had a mehmuni on the weekend.
Yeah.
And we like to think we speak Farsi, you and I, right?
We try. I don't think it's Farsi, but
then,
yeah.
Na baba jan, iftikhar mikuni.
Exhibit A.
Yes. نه فارسی حرف بزنیم میگم.
خب چشم فارسی داریم حرف
ببین وقتی فارسی حرف میزنیم یه بعضی وقتا یه لغتایی هستن که ما تو انگلیسی مصرف میکنیم. میدونی مثلا میگیم که کیان جون شما وقتی که بچه بودی قصه جیزاس میدونستی؟ جیزاس میگیم right?
I thought you were going to say جیش. بله.
No, that's a word you do know. I know you know جیش.
Jesus فکر کنم Jesus تو فارسی یه چیزی دیگه.
Okay, so here, wait. Here's the thing. So I just mentioned. So at this Mamuni, I realized that I've never known the words for Jesus and Moses. By the way, what I'm about to say, all due respect to Jesus and Moses. I don't want to create any issues here, and Peygamber and all of them. We love them all, but I never knew how to say.
Come on,
Jesus and do you know how to say Jesus and Moses? Please.
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah.
مسیح و موسی.
No.
No.
Well, no.
مسیح.
It's Isa. Isa.
And Moses is Musa.
Musa. Now, I heard this, Isa and Musa. I couldn't stop all night. I mean, seriously? Isa and Musa? Like, it's like a buddy comedy, right? It's like the start to a joke. Isa and Musa walk into a bar. I mean, at first I like توجه نمی‌کردم. میگفتم really, like, are you guys making your, you know? And they're like, no, it's Isa and Musa, because they were saying ببین عیسی رفته بود موسی. Like, one of my friends was talking about it, and I was like, who are we talking about? And they were like, Jesus and Moses, and I'm like, Isa and Musa? Like, and I know for you guys, like, who grew up in Iran, this isn't, not only is it not weird, you don't even know why we're laughing, but there's something about saying those in English, like thinking of like Jesus and Moses as Isa and Musa. It sounds like an SNL skit. Like, it's like
totally, especially because there's a lot of buddy comedy films like Cheech and Chong.
Right,
like,
right.
Like that, like
yeah, exactly. It's like a couple of stoners, Isa and Musa. You know, they're like the two last friends that you call to come. Like this, it's like, who's coming? Well, Farhad and Reza will be there, and also there. Isa and Musa are coming as well. Isa and Musa. I never knew. Did you know?
I mean, well, it's like with every other name. There's the Persian version, and then there's the Western version.
Well, first of all, let's just start with Musa. First of all.
How do you go from Moses to Musa?
I mean, I know. In fact, I have a friend named Musa. Like, I know that's Musa. A name, but it doesn't translate in a great way. To like, no one is named Musa. Isa and Musa. I love it so much.
But I think it actually sounds funny to us as well, because we never hear it in the same context. You always like hear it because they're from two very different like centuries, like decades, like
right. Apart. Well, I was saying to Shia, because I was telling him about this a couple of days ago. I was laughing about it, and I was saying, for some reason in English, because now that I think about it, Jesus and Moses, again, all due respect, we are not making fun. It's the translation of the names, right?
Yeah.
Jesus and Moses. Actually, those two words do sound similar, but I've never thought of that. You don't think of that in English, right? You don't think Jesus and Moses sound similar. Even though they both have is and z, you know, but Isa and Musa, I mean, it's like there's a couple of cartoon characters. I mean, it's crazy.
How do they even come up with that? Like, how do they Arabize?
It's got to be a joke. Somebody like they must have known that they're like, yeah, pishnahati daram.
But you know, they didn't do that.
Big even they were like, oh, what should we call them? You know, like Jesus John, or you know, Moses Khan, or من یه فکری دارم بگیم عیسی و موسی.
But they didn't do that with Muhammad. Muhammad is just Muhammad.
What is Muhammad?
It's just Muhammad.
But you don't even say Muhammad. You say Peygamber, right? The prophet.
Muhammad.
Muhammad. Hazrat Muhammad. I think that's why I didn't know them, though, because I thought in Farsi it was just Jesus, and I don't think we never talk about Moses, so I don't know.
But that's the Arabic translation of the name Isa and Musa, and then the Persians
and
just
maybe
adopted.
Moses and Jesus is a Latin translation of that Arabic word.
That's true. Maybe it's the other way around.
Maybe it's originally Isa and Musa.
Yes.
Musa.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
This is like Inception. I was like, maybe, just
Well,
maybe.
it is originally Isa and Musa because they were Arabs. They're
I mean, I don't know. Are we sure about this?
No,
Yeah,
they
let's
weren't.
be real.
They weren't
well,
Arabs.
they're Jewish,
Right.
They're
Right.
from, and back then they spoke
Sephardic,
Aramaic. Yeah. and
Jews.
So what is their
it
real
was the
name?
closest thing
Let's
to Arabic.
get to the
This
bottom
is
of this.
we're heading into the territory now where the people listening are like these four know zero. Let's just stop at it's funny
Isa
in
Musa.
English for somebody who has grown up Iranian and who thinks I know how to speak Farsi. That I don't. I've never heard Isa and Musa, and I mean honestly, the whole Mamoni. I was keeling over in laughter, and they couldn't understand why it was so funny to me. I was like, "You got to be kidding, Isa and Musa!" Like, it's like a primetime NBC comedy, right? Like,
Were you the only one
Katie and
laughing?
Ali or whatever that show
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
you know, Isa and Musa. No, they were laughing after a while because they realized how it did
How
sound kind of funny.
ridiculous.
Speaking of dynamic duos, a shout out to Arash and Anita Fazalipur. They're life partners and business partners. They're the founders of myterms.ca. Myterms.ca. This is a mortgage company in Ontario, Canada. So both Arash and Anita were born in Iran, but grew up in Canada and the States. They decided to go into business and life together almost 20 years ago, and they have a really good record with myterms.ca, focusing on the service aspect of the mortgage business. If you're anywhere in Canada, in Ontario, you're listening to this and you're looking for a mortgage company, these guys are amongst the best. They are very well reviewed online, and they make it a big priority to give back to the Persian community as well. So we love them for it. Arash and Anita Fazalipur, My Terms, one word, myterms.ca. In the coming days on Roqe, Azadeh Shams is coming on, Kian. She is an Italian Iranian. She lives in Milan. We're going to speak to her from Milan, who has created these toys. They're called AZ toys or Aussie toys that help kids learn the Persian alphabet.
Oh.
So they're
that's
like
cute.
block. You know how we have A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
with the English alphabet on
Right.
it. This is the Persian alphabet,
that's
and
sweet.
in and amongst other things that she's developed. So she's got this successful toy company all of a sudden. Azadeh Shams, a gentleman named Farhad Kashani. Shaya, I know you know of this man. He's a former CEO. He's really into aircraft and cars. He was the first writer about cars in Iran. He was a critic, I guess, an automobile writer, and telling you which cars to buy and not to get, and also with planes. He's also a pilot himself. But his distinction at this point is he's part of the Century Travel Club. Or the Travel Century Club, something like that. These are people who've gone to 100 countries or more, and he's gone to every country that the United Nations recognizes in the world except for like 2 or 3. So it's like 200 countries.
Wow.
And so he's a traveler.
Yeah.
He's just a world traveler.
Yeah.
Isn't that something you'd love to do?
That's my dream.
Right?
Yeah. Funny story. I met his daughter in Greece, actually.
That's right. Farhad Kashani, you know this guy.
Randomly, yeah. I happened to be in Mykonos, and funny enough, I was having a bad day in Mykonos, if that's even possible. And I heard these group of girls talking Persian, and I turned around, I was like, oh my God, you guys are Persian. And one of them was Farhad's daughter, Ariana.
And I think his daughters are taking up this thing of wanting to travel
traveling
as well.
around.
Right,
Yeah. I think she's up to 50, maybe, something like that.
Yeah. And he wrote a book called The 60-Year-Old Kid or something like that. Like I think he's in his late 60s now.
Yeah.
But he believes in following your passion, and his passion is traveling, and so he just picks up and goes wherever he can all the time.
Isn't it such a small world? Like the second I heard my mother tongue, I was like, oh my God, you guys are, what a cool thing.
Insiders Club, man.
Yeah.
Tara Tiba coming on the show in
Can't
the coming
wait.
days on Roqe, the great Iranian musician who's in Australia now, and I can't wait to have her on the show as well. And I can announce that Behzad Bulur is coming on our program, the great broadcaster, kind of a genius when it comes to Iranian music, right?
Yes.
He knows,
definitely.
he's interviewed everybody.
Yes.
For years he was on the BBC, or he still is, or I
Yes,
think, but very much looking forward to talking to him. I've watched a lot of his stuff as an interviewer and as a personality on television. Behzad Bulur. joining us in the coming days on Roqe.
How many country have you been, Jian?
Good.
Are you close to 100?
Century?
Yeah.
I haven't counted, but because I was in a touring band, I've probably I've been to every country in Europe and everywhere in the North. Well, I don't know. I guess 50. I don't know. You? Do you know?
I would say about, it's not a month, it's like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
It's not that much.
Yeah, no, I was lucky because I was in a band touring, and then my job in media has required me to travel. So I've been to pretty much every continent, and a lot of, but it's more when you're a touring musician, especially in North America, it's more like I've been to every town. Every single town, like every city in North America, every state in the United States, and some of them many times. Every province in Canada, every state in the now, Captain Reza, how many countries have you been in jail in?
That
I know at least
to.
2. Or was it?
Yes, that is actually precisely correct. China and Seychelles.
But
right.
it was very difficult for Iranian to become a member of that club because of their passport.
That's right.
It's really hard.
I guess he's an American passport,
He is,
Farhad Khashani.
100%.
Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting about Farhad Khashani, and we've got to bring our guest on here, but is that he is in his late 60s, but he's an Instagrammer.
Yeah.
And he's got like a huge following on Instagram. And I don't want to be ageist, because everybody should be on social media if they want to be, whatever. But I realized, I was like, why does this feel different? Why that on his Instagram channel? And then I realized I'm just not used to seeing somebody who's older, being a popular Instagram personality. He's like an influencer.
Right. The funny thing is he doesn't even follow his daughter. And the daughter, she brings it up often. She's like, my dad's cooler than me.
That's amazing. All right, let's get to our featured guest. See you guys on the other side. Here we go. My featured guest today is a true pioneer of women's wrestling in the United States and beyond, a former champion who was the first world medalist in women's wrestling back in 1989. Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston was born in Tehran in the early 70s. Her father was a successful wrestler who taught her the moves at their home while she was growing up in Iran. At the age of 11, in the aftermath of the revolution and amidst the Iran-Iraq War, Afsoon and her family moved to Northern California. This is in 1984. Afsoon attended Independence High School, a school known for its state championships in wrestling. There, she became the first and only girl wrestler on both her high school and college teams. Afsoon made her first USA national team while she was still in high school. And at the 1989 World Championships held in Switzerland, Afsoon was the first American woman to win a world medal for the United States in women's freestyle wrestling. She went on to become a multiple national champion and a 2-time world medalist while also earning her master's degree in physical therapy. Afsoon has in recent years coached the U.S. women's team at many world championships and was awarded Coach of the Year by USA Wrestling. She coached Team USA at the 2016 Olympics in Rio, and that team, of course, won the Olympic gold with her at the helm. She has been inducted into the California Wrestling Hall of Fame and received the Lifetime Achievement Award, and she is currently still coaching and resides in San Diego, California with her husband and 3 children, and she is the subject of a new biography of her life written by Craig Sesker entitled simply Afsoon. But right now, Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston joins me from San Diego. Hello.
Well, hello, and thank you so very much for having me on your show today.
It's a great pleasure to have you on. Congratulations, champ.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, what you have done is... it's truly remarkable. I am in awe of the fortitude it must have taken for a new immigrant girl to go into wrestling and beat the boys in the 1980s. And I want to get into your story, but first, you are an American legend of the sport now. You've won Olympic gold with Team USA, but on your Instagram, you're listed as Iranian. Tell me about being bicultural and being claimed by 2 countries.
Yes, absolutely. Us Iranians are very, very proud of our culture and our heritage. Of course, I'm Iranian. I have Iranian blood running through me. As an Iranian, we went through some hard times, and my family had to immigrate into the United States, and being an immigrant is tough. And as an 11-year-old coming from Iran during that time period, it was a challenge. It was tough, but for me, I found my voice and I found my identity, and I found how to belong in this new country and new culture through wrestling. So that was my journey into really survival and assimilating and becoming an Iranian American and being successful in this new country. But of course, I'm always be Iranian.
Well, you're also, I can only imagine, a proud American, and you should be. And, what you guys have done in terms of Team USA, et cetera. It seems like a little thing. I don't want to harp on it, but, when one is drawing up their profile on Instagram, it's always one of those, on any social media channel, it's one of those moments where you go, who am I again? What do I present to the world? So it was obviously a conscious decision. Here you are, just a few years removed from winning Olympic gold with Team USA. It must have been a conscious decision to put Iranian there. Tell me about that decision.
Yes, actually, very good question and very good points. I am Iranian American. I definitely identify with both cultures. My parents are Iranian. I was born in Iran. I grew up my first formative years in Iran. Then coming to a new country and here in the United States, there were great opportunities given to me. And so I definitely acknowledge that United States is the land of opportunity. And for me, I was able to take advantage of those opportunities, especially for women that may not have been given to me at the time in Iran, but I took advantage of those opportunities. And then, going through high school and college here in the United States, and my husband's American, my kids are half Iranian, half American. So really, that's where I definitely do identify with both countries, both cultures, and I do recognize myself as an Iranian American.
Something I think is really fun is jaleb is that you're just being discovered by Iranians, which must be some source of entertainment for you, given that you actually grew up in Iran. I mean, you're mostly known as Afsoon Johnston, and I think back to when you won that first world medal in 1989. There was no social media for people to discover your roots on a keyboard. I mean, I understand it was actually when you won this 2016 gold as coach of Team USA that a lot of Iranians came to find out that you're also one of us too. What is it like to be just getting known by your ancestral peeps after all these years?
Right. No, it's really fun and it's really neat. I'll tell you a couple of stories that kind of is interesting, and to your point, where I think I'm just now being discovered. But times have also changed. I don't know how I would have been accepted, how much I would have been accepted as an Iranian woman wrestling. Back when I was wrestling in the early 80s, and I remember at the first World Championships that I attended. It was in Martigny, Switzerland. And for the first time ever, historically, United States was sending a women's wrestling team. And it was the first historic world championships with that included women, for women. Right. I remember, of course, having to represent United States, but being there as an athlete at the World Championships with USA on my singlet, on my warm-up. And I noticed that Team Iran Wrestling was there. And of course, I got so excited, and I was, so proud, thinking I'm going to go over and introduce myself and say I'm Iranian, but I'm a woman, but I'm also a wrestler. And Iranian, kushti is in our blood, and thinking that everybody, would be maybe proud of me for that. And so I remember approaching, at the time, this is 1989, approaching the men's national Iranian wrestling coach and saying, "Hi, my name is Afsoon. I'm Iranian. I'm a wrestler." And the coach at the time told me, "Khanum, I think it's great that you wrestle, but at this time, we can't watch you and we can't support you.
Wow.
And that was really devastating to me at the time, thinking, here's an accomplishment that I'm a wrestler and I'm Iranian and I'm a woman and I'm, a pioneer, the first of doing this. And I thought it would be something that maybe they would be proud of me, the Iranian Wrestling Federation, the men's team. But the timing just wasn't right. And I'll tell you another story. So then recently, so remember that story, right? And then just recently, after the 2016 Olympics, now we're going from 1989 to, 2017.
Right. Fast forward 30 years.
Fast forward 30 years, exactly. And this is to my point where times have changed. I was at an international wrestling competition. And again, this time now I'm the U.S. wrestling coach. And, I have my badge around my neck, my credentials, and it says, Afsoon, and it says, Team USA. And as I'm coaching this big international competition, the men and the women were wrestling at the same venue, same time, same place. And I see all the Iranian fans in the stands. And somehow word got out that, oh, you see that USA women's coach, she's actually Iranian. And so every time I walked out into the center stage, competition stage with one of my USA athletes, not only was the USA section cheering, but the whole Iranian section was cheering.
Wow.
It was so neat. And so it's still telling you the story gives me goosebumps, right? And so I remember just going into the stands and taking pictures with the Iranian fans, and they're just welcoming me as one of their own. It didn't matter that I had the USA jacket on. They recognized me as one of their own, right? And like I said, even though it was USA competing, women's USA competing, the Iranian fans were still cheering because I, as an Iranian, was their coach.
That's beautiful.
And it was so neat. So then the story gets even
wait a second.
better.
Was the American team confused? Like, why are the Iranian fans cheering for us? Or I guess they know at this point your background.
They know that I'm Iranian, and they thought it was really, really cool. The athletes loved it because not only do they have the American fans cheering for them, but now they have this whole other country, Iranian fans cheering for them.
Great.
So they loved it. But this is where the story gets even better. So again, we're in the back area, the warm-up area, and I'm warming up my team, before their matches. And I look over, and there is the Iranian men's national team.
Right.
And Rasul Khadem,
different coach, I assume, at this point.
Of course, because this is now 30 years later.
Right.
And so, but I remembered my experience of what had happened 30 years prior. And so I was gun shy. I didn't want to go over and introduce myself because I remember what had happened 30 years prior. And so I, from the corner of my eye, kind of kept an eye on the Iranian team. And again, being so proud that I am Iranian and that is my national team. And I wish that there was a women's Iranian national team competing there, but it was the men's, national wrestling team competing. Right. And so I went about.
And by the way,
business.
just to set this up for any non-Iranians who might be listening, Kushti, like wrestling is, I guess, other than maybe football, other than soccer, is pretty much the biggest sport in Iran, right? I mean, it's a very prominent sport. Yeah.
Yes, Kushti is, our national sport. Kushti and football, right. Wrestling and soccer are definitely given a lot of whereas here in the United States, you may know some of your soccer players, maybe not. You may know some of your wrestlers, probably not.
You definitely know your baseball players or your basketball. Yeah, exactly.
But in Iran, your wrestlers are your national heroes. So here we are in the backstage. I'm warming up Team USA Women's Wrestling, and the Iranian men's national wrestling team is there. And lo and behold, the Iranian coach, Mr. Rasul Khadem, comes over and says, Khanum, lady, are you're Afsoon, right? And right there, I was like, wow, he knows my name. He knows who I am. I'm just like, impressed by even that. And he said, can you come over with me for one moment, please? And I thought, okay, sure, yes, of
Here
course,
we go.
this is Russell Padam. Yeah, of course I'm going to say yes, but I have no idea what he's going to do or say to me. And so he takes me over to his team, the Iranian men's national wrestling team, and he said, "Bachaha, my team, look at this lady, look at this woman. Her name is Afsoon. She is Iranian. She is the first world medalist in women's wrestling. Even though it's for United States, it was for United States, she is Iranian. And I want you to look at her, and I want you to remember her, and I want you to give her medal, her world medal, or her Afsoon, the same respect that you would give to any male wrestler in our country, such as Tahti, such as any of our great male wrestlers that have medaled at the Olympics and World Championships. This woman is pride of our country, and you need to give her recognition and the same respect as you would any male wrestler from our country." And that just blew me away. The fact that the Iranian men's national coach would say that and give me that respect and introduce me as such to his national team 30 years later. So yes, it's great to have Iranian fans.
So, wait. I mean, that is the way you set that up, especially, that is just it's quite a moment. It's cinematic almost. How did that affect you emotionally?
Oh, I think I had tears in my eyes, just tears of, such mixed emotion, to be honest, because that moment to me legitimized me, proved that what I had been doing all these years, I wasn't crazy for being a girl that wanted to wrestle. I wasn't crazy because there was so much negativity and there was so much criticism of me and of my father when I first wrestled. Because here I am, a young girl wrestling, which wrestling wasn't thought to be something girls did.
Sure.
Or at that point, even they would use the word appropriate. It's not appropriate for girls to wrestle.
Right.
And that wasn't even just within the Iranian culture and community. That was within the American culture and community. Like, I had Americans at that time that would call our house and go off on my father and say, "What do you think you're doing, letting your daughter wrestle with boys? Are you crazy? How are you allowing your daughter to do that?"
2 steps back, because I actually want to go through that story, and then and maybe come back to the coach and the moment you've just talked about, because it's so profound and poignant at the same time. Let me first say, I mean, as a kid, you've just talked about how proud you are of your Iranian heritage and your lovely parents. But you don't have great memories of revolutionary Iran before you guys left. I mean, you chronicle some harrowing scenes in your new biography, especially when it comes to, there's a scene with your aunt who I know ends up spending a bunch of jail time. What can you tell us about your memories of that time before you end up coming to the United States?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, growing up as a young kid in Iran in the late 70s, early 80s, I'm sure a lot of Iranians that were in Iran around my age at that time can, have parallel stories and can relate to what my experience is and what I'm saying. I don't have the best memories of that time. There were scary times in Iran. Of course, the Iran-Iraq war was going on. And so I remember as a kid being at home, watching TV, and all of a sudden the red alarm, the red siren would go on TV, and it wasn't a test. It was the red alarm that you better get down in the basement right away, because the next thing we would hear was the Iraqi planes dropping bombs. And, when you've experienced that, that's not something you will ever forget in your lifetime. The sound of those bombs dropping and windows shattering and how scary that was. And then going to school and, when the revolution revolution was first happening and the changes were happening. And see, when I went to school in Iran, even in first grade, second grade, I was going to a school that was German and Iranian school, because my father had been educated in Germany. And so I knew of a lot of the Western influences. And then all of a sudden the revolution happens and a lot of changes happen. Then in school we're forced to wear rusari and, cover up and abide by all the Islamic rules and regulations, even at school. And then we're taught to say "Marg bar Amerika," "Marg bar Englistan," "Marg bar France."
Death to America, death to England. Yeah,
yes, yeah. Exactly. And as kids, we're brainwashed to say that over and over and over again. And then, coming home and then my parents who had relatives in the United States saying, no, you shouldn't say death to anybody. And, there's great people everywhere. And that they're not wanting war, they want peace, and they want, and then having to keep everything kind of secretive, the fact that they're planning to leave Iran and really flee Iran. And I'm an only child, and my parents want a better future for their only daughter. And unfortunately, at that time, Iran wasn't going to be a place where they thought they could raise their only daughter to have a great, successful future. And so they made a lot of sacrifices, which I'm now just realizing as an adult myself, for them to be able to leave their home country of Iran, right, and become an immigrant to a new country. And so I'm sure a lot of your listeners right now, can relate to that time if they immigrated themselves, or if they had their parents immigrate during that time period. Yes. And so unfortunately, my memories of Iran during that time were of scary times, of times of oppression and not being able to express myself and be who I am. And so, in my home, my parents taught me differently, and my dad, because of his love of wrestling, would teach me wrestling. And so growing up, I knew all the wrestling moves. I knew Fitili Peach, and I knew, all the great techniques of Iranian wrestlers.
But, your dad was a well-known wrestler in Iran, right?
Yes, he was. And in some of his time, he wrestled in Europe.
And what's his name?
Manuchehr Roshanzamir.
And what did you make of him when you were a little girl? I mean, what's it like to have a well-known wrestler as a dad?
Well, that's the funny thing. I didn't know. I didn't know the difference. I thought it was normal. I thought my father wrestling and teaching me wrestling moves was what everybody did in their household. We would move the living room table, and on our beautiful Persian rug, that became our doshak kushti. That became our wrestling mat.
By the way, this is real wrestling, right? It's not the Hulk Hogan kind of. It's not Iron Sheik as much as we love him. It's not. Yes. It's not the entertaining. This is like athletic.
This is freestyle wrestling. This is what Takhti and all our great Iranian wrestlers are known for. The international Olympic style of wrestling. So that's what my father was, and that's what he taught me. And I thought that's what everybody did in their living room. It wasn't. Right. It wasn't until I went outside of the house and got older, and I thought, oh, okay, so this isn't a thing that everyone does at home. This is unique, and to me and my family, me and my father. But outside of our home, and especially in Iran, that's not something I could tell people. That's not something I could share. That was not something I could display. The fact that I loved wrestling, and as a girl,
you wanted to wrestle, if as long as you can remember.
Yes, but that was never even a reality. Uh-huh. That was never even a thing. First of all, girls didn't do that. Second of all, girls didn't do that in Iran. And so again, now fast forward to when we did come to United States, and again, I call it the land of opportunity for many different reasons. But for me, in that, coming to United States, yes, girls still didn't wrestle. But what girls did do is they did have opportunities. Right. They weren't limited by law
Can I just ask you? I want to get into you coming into the States and when you make that turn to actually become a wrestler. But can I just a general question? What is it about wrestling that appeals to you? I mean, if you were to make a case for this sport, because you obviously are passionate about it, you love it. What is it that is so appealing about wrestling?
Oh, wrestling is it. There is not any sport like wrestling, and of course I'm biased, but wrestling is an individual sport. Wrestling is all about you. It's a sport that when you step on the mat, you can't blame your losses on anybody else. You can't say it was my teammate that didn't pass the ball, or my team that missed this, or my team that didn't perform. Wrestling, it's you. You've stepped on the mat and you've prepared. And so the glory of the win is all you, and the defeat of the loss is all you. And so it's character building. The skills and the things that I've learned through the sport of wrestling, I can apply to my life in whatever situation.
But that's true of, say, tennis too, right? Where it's one-on-one. I mean, any individual
but
sport.
Tennis isn't where you're physically grappling with somebody else.
Right.
You know, it's if you're not well prepared, you have someone else that is really going after you physically. It is a physical challenge. It doesn't involve a ball. It's not a game. No, you know, it is a wrestling match. It's blood, tears, and sweat, literally. It's broken ears and bloody noses, and it's, you know, how many other sports do you have where the ears of the wrestlers, you know, and that's our badge of courage. It's so I know I'm being biased, but wrestling is, I can't, you know, and I think every wrestler who's ever stepped on the mat can relate to that. It's a fraternity. And so to my point, it's such a great experience. Why should you limit that to only half the population? Meaning only men having that opportunity.
I had a gym teacher in grade 8 who, and he was, I think he had been a wrestling coach or something, but he was our gym teacher. And I was a soccer player, a football fan, you know, a soccer fan. And I remember him saying, so part of our gym class during the year was to do wrestling, which I, of course, was horrible at. I got the shit kicked out of me most of the time. But I remember him saying, yeah, you know, it's great that you're good at football. You're good at, you know, there's lots of other sports. This is the only sport where you have to use every single centimeter of every single part of your body. Every single part of you has to be involved. Is that true? Is that what you would say about?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other great thing about wrestling, if you think about it, you know, any body can wrestle, and literally any body and body type. Like, you know, you have wrestlers that are short and stocky. You have wrestlers that are tall and lengthy. You have wrestlers that are, you know, whereas like with American football, like you've got to be big and strong and, you know, whatnot. And with wrestling, you can be 105 pounder, you know, and still be able to be an Olympic gold medalist, you know. So yeah, it has the different weight classes.
And you're pretty diminutive yourself, right? You're not
like a linebacker.
Yeah. I mean, you hear wrestler and you just, you're right. There's a stereotype that, again, you have to look like, you know, Rick and Nature Boy Flair or something like The Rock, you know? And it's this is not really what Olympic wrestling is all about. It's really like core strength and now, just before we leave your time in Iran, tell me about this incident with your aunt, because you talk about that. It seems like it's something that's burned into your memory. What happened with her?
Yes. So my aunt, you know, my mom's family, 9 kids, right? So you have, my mom is the oldest daughter, and then my aunt was the baby. And so by the time I was born, my aunt and I are very close in age, actually. And so being an only child, my aunt was kind of my playmate. So she's the one that, like we played Barbies with, played, you know, cooking, house, whatever. So she was she was an aunt, but she was more like a sister to me. So, we were kind of closer in age. And so then when she was a teenager, during that time in Iran, she got involved with some of her friends that were into politics and were involved with some anti-government things at the time. And during that time in Iran, things were really scary and really strict, and they really went after anybody that was saying or doing anything against the government. And somehow they found out that my aunt was involved with some of her friends with an anti-government group. And so from what I remember of it, I was a kid. I was really young. I was, 10, 11 years old. We were all at my grandparents' house about to have dinner. And I just remember that's when the Revolutionary Guards all stormed in and looking for my aunt. And, it just was a chaotic scene. And I remember bits and pieces. And from what I remember, and then my mom's kind of filled in on, I in writing the book, when I was being interviewed, when the author was writing the book and asking me these stories, I recalled the stories, but then almost in my own mind, I kept thinking, am I imagining this, or did this really happen?
Right.
Yeah. And then I would talk to my mom on the phone, and I said, Mom, this is what I told the author, the writer. Did this really happen? And my mom would say, yes, this really happened. And then she would fill in more detail and more of the gaps. And it was kind of crazy because some parts of it I remember so vividly, and other parts of it I think I've just really chosen to block out because it was such a traumatic event. But yeah, so basically they took my aunt away by force, and then she was in political prison and being tortured and whatnot. And this is a teenager, this is a teenage girl, and again, that very well could have been my future, right? And so that's again what the decision my parents made to sacrifice so much and come to a new country. And again, like I said, land of opportunity.
Absolutely, John. At that age, you don't know anything different because you've been living in, obviously you remember the time before the revolution, even though you were a little kid, but did you want to leave Iran, or was there some fear associated with going to America too? What was your feeling at that time?
That's a great question. That is a great question. And so, to be honest, because at that time it was such a dangerous time in Iran, my parents kept everything from me. They didn't want to stress their child out with details that we were going to leave Iran and we're going to immigrate to a new country. And so, to be honest, they were doing a lot of things, like, for example, selling the furniture in my house. And initially, I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. And so they only shared with me, it was maybe less than a month before we were actually going to leave the country, that this was actually happening, and that we were leaving Iran and immigrating to the United States. And so when they told me that, the way, you got to remember, in school I'm saying Marg bar America, death to United States.
Right.
And then all of a sudden at home, my parents are telling me, we're moving to United States.
Right, it's a little confusing for a kid.
It was very confusing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so then people are coming through our house and buying our furniture, and all of a sudden I'm being told we're going to be leaving everything, my friends. And even though it was such a crazy time in Iran and scary time in Iran, the unknown of what is the United States going to be like, and what is my life going to be like. But this is how my parents painted the picture for me. They said, the United States, you can walk into a grocery store and you can buy fresh fruit and unlimited amount of meat and, milk. And because at that time, going through the Iraq war, there was not limited supply of even food and whatnot. I would have to wait in line for meat at 5 a.m. as a kid, for the butcher shop and then there was the long, long line. And maybe you got meat that day, maybe you didn't. Maybe they ran out by the time it got to you, And so we were living during those times in Iran. And then what my parents are telling me is that United States has unlimited supply of everything, and there's great clothes, and you don't have to wear the rusari and chador, and you can express yourself. And so I would go to bed and I would have these dreams of what United States would be like. I dreamt of, it was funny, I compare it to Wizard of Oz, like, Dorothy skipping along the roads made of gold brick, golden bricks. And so it was really, like you said, confusing. But here's the ironic part. Once I did arrive to the United States, to California, and we settled in Northern California, that was the start of my problems. That was the start of my hardship. That was the hardest time, because even though, yes, I would go to the grocery store and there was unlimited supply of fresh produce and milk and meats and everything, one, I didn't speak a single word of English.
Nothing at all, huh? You didn't?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. But two, I was this weird kid, that dressed differently and looked different from a different country. And then the kids at school would ask me, what country are you from? I was going to
say, it's not just a different country. It's the country that just to take us back to the early 80s. It's the country that has been, that the kids in America, the counterpoint to the kids in Iran screaming death to America, the kids in America have been taught this is the evil country that we're against, right? So,
Exactly. Because it was right after the American hostage crisis that occurred in Iran. This is all early 80s, where the relationship between the United States and Iran was definitely not good. And so, kids are asking me, where are you from? What nationality are you? And I would proudly say, I'm Iranian, and they would in turn look at me and say, you're a terrorist, get out of our country, go back to your own country, and
so this is the part of your story. Sorry to cut you off. I said the word cinematic earlier. I mean, the story of you coming to America and then becoming a star U.S. athlete. It's like a movie. You come in '84. You don't really speak the language. It'd be clear that you wouldn't really fit in at the time. It's not like Northern California is full of Iranians in that moment. There's a fateful turn when you decide you want to be on the high school wrestling team with the boys. This is when I talked about your fortitude in the introduction or in the beginning of this interview. I mean, you're a new immigrant, you're a girl. Where did you get the courage to believe you could do this, or to even say, this is, hey guys, include me?
Right. Well, at that point it became survival mode, right? Because here I had to figure out a way where I was going to be accepted into this new culture, into this new environment. And I was that weird kid and we had no money too. We had left everything behind. So it was extreme poverty. So I was definitely not the popular kid in school. So I had to figure out, how do I become accepted? And so I thought, okay, well, I need to figure out how to become the all-American girl, to be accepted and to fit in. And so where I wasn't popular, but where I was always picked first on a team was when it came to athletics. And I knew I was good at sports. And in particular, I was good at wrestling, but still, this is still early 80s. Girls still didn't wrestle, not even in the United States. And so I thought, okay, to do the all-American girl thing and the sporty thing, I need to reinvent myself. And so what do popular American girls in high school do? Well, cheerleaders. Oh, what is a cheerleader? I had no idea what a cheerleader even was, but I knew they were popular. So I was like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went out for the cheerleading team, and all of a sudden I'm, trading in my chador for this really short skirt and these pom-pom-y looking things. And I'm jumping up and down and cheering for the boys, And yeah, it brought me popularity, but it just wasn't me.
Right.
And so what happened, I endured the football season. And then during the winter season, winter sports, what happens in the United States is it's basketball and wrestling season. And so half the cheerleaders go on and to cheer for the basketball team. And the other half of the cheerleaders become what is called stat girls. So basically they're keeping the statistics for the wrestlers, you know, 2 takedown, 1 point escape, you know, that kind of thing, that the statistics for the wrestlers. And so of course I'm like, oh, wrestling. I love wrestling. And that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to go keep the statistics for the wrestling team and cheer for the wrestlers. And so that lasted about a month because as I'm watching the wrestlers, I'm going, why am I cheering for them? I know all
I'm better than them.
I'm better than them.
Yeah.
And so this is another turning point. This is a moment where I think changed everything for me. So I'm at my high school. It's after school, and the wrestlers are waiting out they're all boys. Of course, it's the boys wrestling team. They're outside the wrestling room waiting for the coach to open up the wrestling room. And here I am walking past them, and I'm in my cheerleading outfit along with my friend who's also a cheerleader. And the captain of the wrestling team kind of starts teasing my friend and kind of, just talking with her and whatever. And, I don't know what made me do this, but I started speaking up and I said, hey, leave her alone. And he goes, oh yeah, what are you going to do about it? And he's standing outside of the wrestling room on this grass area, and he's standing in this perfect stance. And I don't know what triggered me in my mind, but I blasted him with a wrestling move we call a double leg. But I blasted him with this double leg and landed him right on his back in front of all the other wrestlers, So you could imagine, here I am, a girl, freshman, in her cheerleading outfit, taking down the captain of the wrestling team in front of the other wrestlers.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, wow, whoa, she took him down. Wait, how do you know how to wrestle?
With a wrestling move, you did this. It's not just...
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I proceeded to wrestle him, and I'm actually wrestling him, and these other wrestlers are just in shock watching this girl in her cheerleading outfit wrestling their captain and kind of beating him, and she's actually knowing how to wrestle. And so they go, well, you really know how to wrestle. They go, why don't you come out for our wrestling team? Of course, half jokingly, But I didn't take it as a joke. I thought, why don't I go out for the wrestling team? Because here's why. I'm in this new country that, yes, granted, girls don't wrestle, but there are laws. There is what Title IX had just come out, which had stated that if there is a male sport and there isn't an equal women's sport, that a girl can participate legally in the male sport.
Right.
And for me, that was like, that's perfect for me, because if I want to go out for the boys wrestling team, there's nothing that legally can stop me. The law is on my side.
You knew that. You knew that as a kid? You knew about that Title IX?
Well, yeah. Because,
you knew something like that.
I knew something like that because it was in the news a lot. Right. It was, and I was good at sports. And so, speak the language too well, but you don't need English to enjoy sports and watch sports,
But
and
there's
so
something else that happens though around that time that it really, when I read about this and I thought, this is really important in terms of the trajectory of your life. The coach, as I understand it at that point. So you say, I want to be on the wrestling team. You correct me if I've got this right. He says, I won't agree to put you on the team before speaking to your father. I guess he was expecting your dad to say no.
Absolutely.
And it's quite beautiful that your Iranian dad not only says yes, but supports your journey as an athlete, as a wrestler. Can you reflect on that, the kind of person your dad was?
Exactly.
I should say, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my father, I love my parents. They're in their 70s and 80s now. My mom's in her 70s, my dad's in his 80s, and I see them all the time, and they're very much involved in my life and my kids' lives, and I absolutely love my parents. But thinking back in the, early 80s, what a forward thinker my father was. What a, again, an Iranian father who had, I think, initially always wanted a son, right, to follow in his footsteps. Iranian men, you think stereotypically they want their boy, they want their son. And I end up being born, and I'm an only child, his only child, and I end up being a girl. And so, he thinks, okay, well, I have a daughter, and I'm going to provide her with the same opportunities, and I'm not going to let her limit herself. And I'm not going to think that because she's a girl, she shouldn't be doing this and this and that. So just imagine what an open-minded, forward thinker my father was, in order to teach me wrestling, and say, I'm gonna treat my child the same way. Doesn't matter boy or girl. I'm gonna, treat my daughter the same way and give her the same opportunities and spend the same time and teach her and be just as proud of her. And so that really was that mentality that really is the reason I am who I am, and I was able to achieve what I have been able to achieve.
It's amazing.
And so, yeah, absolutely. That high school coach 100% thought he would be calling this Iranian father and saying, and kind of tattletelling on me, do you know what your daughter wants to do? She wants to roll around with the boys. And, and my program, which Independence High School had a powerhouse of a wrestling program, and so the coach prided himself on his wrestling team, and we're state champs, and we have this, the best wrestling program in the state. And here's this girl in her cheerleading outfit wanting to come out to roll around with the boys, as he was thinking about it, and I'm gonna talk to her dad, and she's Iranian. No way would her father allow her to wrestle on my wrestling team, and so that was his mindset, his thought process when he told me he needed to call my father. And so, boy, was he surprised, and did he have a shock coming to him when my father, in his thick Iranian accent, said, yeah, I think it is wonderful. I love that my daughter wrestling. It's my dream that my daughter wrestles.
It's only 3 or 4 years later, 1989, those world championships we mentioned earlier in the interview in Switzerland. You're still just a teen. You didn't speak the language, 4 years earlier, 5 years earlier. What did it mean to win that first women's medal in freestyle wrestling and do it for the USA?
Yeah, and this is the ironic thing about it. I had no idea what I was doing when it was happening, because at that time, I didn't think it would become a historic first world medal. It wasn't until, like you were saying earlier, how does it feel for the fans just now to be recognizing you? And same thing. At that time, we didn't recognize the significance of that medal. It wasn't until now, where women's wrestling has become to where it is, that medal has gained significance and recognition.
Right.
So at that time, when I was competing at the first world championships, I was just in awe. I was a teenager that all of a sudden I was on a world stage along with these, male Olympic medalists. Because you got to understand, in 1989 World Championships, that was the first time ever they had women's World Championship wrestling.
Right.
And so all along in high school, I had posters of these famous wrestlers on my, whereas most girls have posters of singers or rock stars or whatever. I had posters of these wrestlers on my wall, these famous wrestlers. And all of a sudden, I'm competing on the next wrestling mat next to them. So at the World Championships, I was more like starstruck. I was more in like awe, going, wow, I'm wrestling alongside Bruce Baumgartner and John Smith and, the likes of just famous Iranian wrestlers who, for me, in my mind, were just like my rock stars. And all of a sudden, I'm being called up to compete in the next match alongside the mat that, a famous wrestler just got off of. So I didn't realize the significance of it. And when I medaled at that World Championships, I was happy just to be having the opportunity and to be included and being allowed to.
You don't know you're a pioneer. The history has to happen for you to become a pioneer, right? You don't know you're a pioneer in the moment. Yeah.
Exactly. I had no idea. I come back home and I'm taking my senior pictures for high school and everyone's going, what'd you do this summer? We went to the beach. And I'm like, well, I competed at the World Championships.
Well, let me ask you about that. I mean, you go on to win a number of championships and medals for America. I mean, you talk about how women's wrestling has changed. I think it's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States now for women.
Yes.
Women's wrestling is now an Olympic sport, of course. It was not when you were competing in your prime. Do you lament that a sport that has become so popular for girls and for women now was not as big when you were dominating it and blazing the way forward?
There is part of that. I do. It's bittersweet. It is definitely bittersweet because somebody had to start it, right? So I'm really glad it was me that I had I had a part in starting it. But at the same time, I see the athletes that I'm coaching now, they have agents and they have social media, to where they have all these sponsorships and they're recognized and, and at that time, the only recognition I was getting at was, people going, what the heck are you doing? Are you crazy? And so I never imagined in my lifetime when I was competing, when I was getting all the criticism, when I was wrestling and people going, what are you doing? You're a girl. We don't need a sideshow that resembles mud wrestling. Girls don't belong on the wrestling mat. That was the only recognition I was getting. In my lifetime, only 30 years later, seeing that, like you said, girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport in the United States. That internationally, we have all kinds of amazing competitions. That women's world wrestling championships are being held along with the men's world championships. That the Olympics include the same number of women and men wrestling and the same what do you call it? Like when the Iranian coach gave me that same recognition,
status.
that same status, exactly. And so in 30 years to see it come where it is now, I'm very, very proud of that. And so, I don't think I would change a thing because it had to start somewhere. And I'm glad that it started with me. I'm glad to be alive to see where it has come and where it is now.
Alive, you're still young. Did that criticism that came? I mean, did that continue even after you won medals, or once you become a winner, do you still get criticized?
The medals weren't really that significant early on. It wasn't recognized it wasn't given the same amount of respect because here's what the other thing had to happen is we were earning medals and then all of a sudden USA Wrestling had to give us the same prize money and all of a sudden they didn't want to give out more money on the women's side. And so they really were trying to keep us kind of down and not recognize our accomplishments. But of course, with time, even here, even in the United States, the equal opportunities for men and women. And so I say we've come a long ways, baby. And now it's funny because I'm getting the recognition, a lot more recognition now, even, you said from the Iranian community, but also from the American community from USA Wrestling. Like I'm just now getting inducted into all these Hall of Fames and getting all the success and all the sponsorships and things like that. It's funny because it's been 30 years since, my first world medal and just just now, I don't know whether it's because of social media or how, where the growth of women's wrestling has come, but it's just now that I'm seeing the rewards of it.
What has it been like to morph into a coach, and what did it mean to win gold with Team USA in Rio 4 years ago?
It's come full circle for me because obviously when I first started wrestling, my goal was just for them to allow me to wrestle. I know I'm a girl, but this isn't a weird sideshow freak thing. I love wrestling, and why shouldn't I be given the opportunity to wrestle? So that was my goal, is just let me do this, just let me wrestle. And then I got into high school, and my goal was, okay, I just want to beat the boys, and I want to make varsity and, accomplish that. And then my goal was, oh, okay, I'm on the national team now. I want to win the national championships and I want to win the world championships. And then my goal was, okay, so here's another lesson in things. Don't limit yourself, right? In your goals, set goals and shoot, have dreams and shoot for it. And you never know how far it can take you. But so then my goal was the Olympics. I want to compete in the Olympics. I want to become an Olympic gold medalist. And because I had started so young and I was a pioneer and I was, the first to kind of start women's wrestling. Women's wrestling did not get into the Olympics when I was still at my competing age. So I was waiting for the 2000 Olympics. So I still had the number 1 ranking in the United States at that time. And in 2000, I had just gotten married. I was holding off having kids because I wanted women's wrestling to debut in the Olympic Games, and I wanted to be the first Olympic medalist as well. Mm-hmm. And so I put off having kids and my career as a physical therapist to still train and still compete in the hopes of competing in the 2000 Olympics. Well, women's wrestling did not debut in the 2000 Olympics, and they told us that it would debut in 2004 Olympics. So in 2000, I was at that crossroads. What do I do? Mm-hmm. Do I retire now at the top of my sport, at the top of my game, and, retire and go on into coaching and go on into practicing physical therapy and having my family? Or do I put all of that on hold for another 4 years with really no guarantees that it would become an Olympic sport in 2004? So at that time, I made the decision that I was going to retire and start my family. So I had my son in 2002. And then in 2004, I was pregnant with my daughter. And that's when women's wrestling debuted in the Olympics. So there I was, 9 months pregnant with my second child, and I'm watching on TV women's wrestling in the Olympics. And I just remember breaking down and becoming so emotional. I mean, you're emotional anyway when you're 9 months pregnant, right? But then here, everything that I had hoped for and dreamt about and set a goal for to compete in the Olympics. And the time was not for me. Then I had my daughter and I took one look at her and I call her my Olympic gold medal and I wouldn't change anything. My daughter, that was definitely the right decision for me. But for me... And
you didn't consider joining the team whilst 9 months pregnant?
I thought about it.
You seem to be able to do anything. So,
But so here's where the story gets interesting. So yeah, that was always a void for me. That was always, that itch that needs scratching that you can't quite get to, right? It was something that just always bothered me, that just always bugged me. Like, I never competed in the Olympics. The Olympics was always, my dream, and it just, that itch was always there, and I couldn't get to it to scratch it until I got back into it as a coach, and now it's an Olympic sport for women. And I thought, okay, so now that's my goal, is maybe I didn't get to compete in the Olympics. But gosh darn it, I'm going to go and get that Olympic gold medal, whether that means me having to coach someone to do it. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, and that's where we made history again by the United States getting that Olympic gold medal in the last Olympics when I was able to coach it. So yeah, I finally made my Olympic dream happen. A little bit different. It happened as a coach and not as a competitor, but regardless, I was able to fulfill that dream. And so that experience for me was very surreal and came full circle and closed the loop.
It's your story is just it really is. I mean, this book is going to get optioned to become a movie if anyone has any sanity. You could outdo Roqe for great storylines just without even embellishing them.
Thank you, and that's my hope and my dream. I hope that this story comes in front of maybe a successful Iranian-American that is in the movie business, and because at one point they did buy an American production company did buy my story rights for a year, and they wrote a couple of different screenplays on it to make it into a movie, and then unfortunately it's still out there. We're looking for a movie production company or an investment group or someone that believes in this story and that is willing and maybe has the way and the means to turn it into a movie, because that would be so amazing. It would be great for the Iranian-American community.
Yeah, the story is there, and the proof is you can. Back to this bicultural idea that we started with before I let you go. I understand you've been. Here's how much things have changed, I suppose. Even though many folks lament the situation that continues in Iran under the current government and regime. But I understand you've been approached by Iran, by the national team, to become a coach.
Yeah, again, I'm an Iranian-American. I'm always going to be Iranian, and so how amazing would it be for me to be able to go back to Iran and be able to coach and teach Iranian women how to wrestle. And so, yes, so Iran is starting a women's wrestling team, again, with a lot in limitations still. And
like what?
Maybe
they have to wear the rusari, and they have
only in gyms where it's only women,
right.
And no men can be present, and of course, you can't have a male coach, and there haven't been enough women wrestlers at the level we need in order to coach the women's Iranian national team.
Right.
And so I'm hoping that that's something that maybe will be in the future. It would be great. It would be my dream. Like, that would be the ultimate dream for me, right? To come from, Iranian, being of Iranian heritage, to where, my story in America, but then actually to see how far women's wrestling has come in the United States, but then the ultimate thing, to see women's wrestling in Iran.
The sequel to the movie is the sequel to the Afsoon 2. The sequel is that you win the gold for the Iranian team as well.
Oh my gosh, that gives me goosebumps. How amazing would that
be? I know that there's Iranians who are aware of you now, and there's probably Iranian girls who follow you on social media now. I mean, what is your advice to Iranian girls in Iran or beyond who follow you on social media or know your story and want to get involved and want to get into wrestling themselves? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's been so great that so many have actually reached out to me, either on my Facebook page, which is, Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston, my Instagram, Afsoon Wrestling. This younger generation, I think, tends to reach out to me on Instagram. So yeah, my Instagram page, Afsoon Wrestling, has really blown up. But it's really cool because they'll send me messages and say, oh, I'm Iranian also. And whether they're all over Europe, and actually some that are still in Iran. But yeah, I've had a lot of not only girl wrestlers reach out to me, but actually fathers that are saying, we want our daughters to wrestle, and we love your story, and what advice would you give? And yeah, so I've given advice both to the parents, the fathers, and allowing their girls to wrestle. And then it's been just so cool for these young girls that have reached out to me and say, I love wrestling. I want to wrestle. And so I do end up following them and encouraging them and giving them little
So what is the advice
in
a nutshell? What would you say? What is the advice to?
My big thing is believe in yourself and follow your dreams. Like, I never thought all of this was possible. They told me I can't do it, and I believed in myself. No, I can do this. And if it's something you love and you're passionate enough about, don't let anybody stop you. Now, wrestling is a tough sport, like we talked about. It is a very challenging sport, but if you love it, definitely don't let anybody stop you, and believe in yourself and follow your dreams.
I thought the advice was going to be randomly tackle the captain of the wrestling team on some grass outside of the school.
I know, but those moments like that, you would have never imagined happening. And it's funny, a little moment like that just changes the course of your lifetime and sets you on this crazy path.
Hey, where was your dad when you won the Olympic gold in 2016? What was he watching on TV? Was he in Rio? What did he?
Yeah. So what happened was, with the Olympics, see, people don't realize it, but we had to be in Rio for a whole month before our competition. For the last 4 years prior to the Olympics, we had to travel to different countries to qualify. There's a lot of behind the scenes that's involved that, people don't realize, and all you watch is the Olympics, but there's so much more that goes into it. So we were actually in Rio a month prior to the competition, because we had to get acclimated. We had to get used to the food, the water, like everything, our sleep patterns, our training in that time zone, everything. So for a whole month before the Olympics, we were already in Rio. So my parents, I love my parents, they actually moved into my house and watched my 3 kids and my house while I was in Rio. There's no way I could have done it without the support of my husband and my parents. So my parents actually moved into my house, and so they were with my kids, and yes, they watched it on TV, and and I communicated with them, of course, but my husband joined me in Rio the week before the Olympics. So it was my parents at my house with my kids watching it on TV, like everyone.
Your parents must be so proud. Your dad, the wrestler himself, to see what you've done. It must be just such a joy for him.
Yeah, well, it was his decisions and his willingness and his open-mindedness that really ultimately, I was able to reach the success because of it.
And your kids get grandma's cooking while you're gone, so everybody wins. They get the Persian.
Yeah, my warma sabzi is definitely not as good as my mom's. My kids are like, "You sure this is the same? This isn't the same thing Grandma makes."
Mom's good at wrestling, but I don't know about her warma sabzi.
Yeah.
It's a great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for all that you've done for the community and being such a role model. And I can only imagine that there's more ahead in terms of someone who's broken so many barriers and who's set the bar high and continues to do so. I really appreciate it. I hope I get to meet you in person at some point and see you in San Diego.
Yeah, I would love, as things open up, to be able to do an in-person interview with you guys sometime. I really enjoyed my time being on your program, being on your show, and talking with you. Some great questions, and I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll look forward to doing that again. Thank you for doing this. Take care. Khudafis.
Khudafis.
Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston, an Iranian-American wrestler and wrestling coach, and a true pioneer of the sport around the world. The new biography about her is entitled Afsoon, and it can be found at afsoonwrestling.com. Afsoonwrestling.com. Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston joined us from San Diego, California today. All right, microphone's back on for Captain Reza, Groovy Shy, and the fabulous Jian. Man, that was exhilarating. I was already a fan of hers. Now I'm a bigger fan. The story of the two the coaches, 30 years apart. The Iranian team coach, the first one says, "Khanum, we can't support you," and then then now, just a few, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, come meet the team. You guys have to respect this woman. She's a champion. I love that.
It was amazing. It was one of the most inspiring interviews I ever listened to. Like that story, obviously, but for me, was two of her stories like really resonated with me. One was when she tackled the boy, with the wrestling move, took him down, and then everybody was like, "Whoa, how do you know the wrestling moves?" And then the other one, when and I never thought of it that way. She was like, "This is like, it's not there is no ball in this sport. It's not a game." And it's a match. I right away.
You never thought about the fact that there's no ball in wrestling.
No. I knew there was no ball in wrestling.
Are you sure? Sometimes I don't know about you, Reza.
Oh my God, you guys! No, I
never thought about the fact that there's no paddle in wrestling.
To be clear, Reza, there is no balls.
There's no racket in wrestling.
Oh my God.
Imagine if there were beat the crap out of each other.
I never thought that there's no basketball in wrestling.
What happened? You got shit kicked out of you. I thought there was a ball in this game. Oh, it's not a game. No, she said it's not a game, and I was like, oh, you're right. We call other, certain sports a game. There's a game on, but with wrestling or martial arts and stuff, you don't say there's a game on. It was kind of cool.
It's so hard. Wrestling is so hard.
It is. It's only 5 minutes, but you feel like...
Well, it's just all core strength, I guess.
I used to wrestle when I was in high school.
Really?
Were you any good?
I did. I was okay. I was decent.
So he was terrible.
Yeah, you were no good.
But I got...
He thought there was a ball. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought...
What kind of wrestling were you doing? What were they teaching you in Shiraz?
So what kind
Here's a tennis ball.
What kind of balls are we talking about?
I never knew that there was no ball in wrestling.
Well, there are if there's too many.
There's something wrong with this guy. When the wrestling mat with the ball, he thinks...
Is it wrestling for special needs, maybe?
No, but no, I broke my arm wrestling a guy who was like much bigger than me, and then that was it. That was the end of that for me. I was like, nah, this ain't for me.
And I was curious that sorry, Shaya, you go ahead. You were about to say something, and then Reza
No, I was sad because of Reza.
In general, or related to this conversation?
In general.
No, that
Sometimes I think of Reza and I get goosebumps.
No, he gets sad thinking
It gets
about
sad
it.
for you. Why were you sad thinking of Reza?
he said that his arm broke, so I.
Aww.
Well, but I actually, let's talk about the Afsoon.
Please.
Yes, please. Back
If
to
that's
Afsoon.
possible. The guest who we just had on for over an hour, who's a champion, a gold medalist. Let's talk about her rather than Captain Reza. I was a wrestler too.
It always goes back to his life. Like reflects.
No.
Like, oh,
By
she was a supermodel. Back in my day, I tried to be a model.
This woman has won medal. She's like pioneer of the sport. It reminds me of me. I was a wrestler in Shiraz.
That's not what I said.
Go on, Shia, please.
Yes, please.
All the stories was amazing. I mean, she kept giving me goosebumps and all things. But actually, I want to mention that, I've seen a lot of interviews, and this year in Roqe, you interviewed a lot of people, and there is a lot of poets or writers or directors, musicians that they kind of like me, we cannot speak, but the way she speaks, I mean, the way she tells the story.
Yes, it's not just her fluency in English you're talking about. You're talking about the fact she's a storyteller.
Yes, the fact that she, it's like an art, she tells a story. It's like,
this probably sounds ridiculous given that she's won a gold medal as a coach, but you can tell she's probably a really, really good coach, right?
Yes.
Just that she's got so much perspective and nuance and even storytelling. You can imagine her inspiring her team, the way that she brings them along. I mean, there's so many things about this person that are just I still can't get over the fact. I said it at the top of the show. I said it to her in the interview. I just can't get over the fact that she comes from Iran, an awkward, kid who doesn't speak the language, and comes in the 80s. This is not, don't imagine today in Toronto or London or LA. This is like, in the 80s coming to Northern California, you don't fit in. You're the only immigrant kid, the Persian kid. And then to have the fortitude to not only overcome that and become successful, but to do so in a sport that was almost entirely a male-dominated sport. It didn't exist as a women's sport, saying, no, I'm going to do this. And then to rise to the heights of Team USA within a few years and become this inspiration. I just think it's a great story.
It is an incredible story. When we said that we had this woman on our show, you mentioned the name. To me, I was like, okay, I don't recognize the name, so I didn't have any expectations. But man, just listening to that story, it was captivating.
Yeah.
I really hope that one day we get to see that story on the big screen. Are you kidding me?
Either her story or Reza's. Reza's story being a wrestler as well. Because by the way, Kian, did you know that Reza was a wrestler? Until he broke his arm. He was one of the best.
Of course he was. But super inspiring story. And I think I would have been a great wrestler. They called me the bulldozer on the soccer field.
You know what I thought? I thought maybe you were a wrestler.
No, I didn't. I told you my mom was such a lady and tried to preserve my beauty in some sense. So even soccer was she took me out because it was bruising.
But again, I mean, if you look at the pictures of Afsoon and stuff, we have the stereotype of wrestling being this brawny thing. You got to be huge. You're in weight classes, right? So you can be small and slim and whatever. You don't have to be. I mean, that was one of the things she said, actually, that it's for anybody. Wrestling is for any weight class. There's no sort of requirement of what you...
And respect to her father. We come from a culture that's very, male dominated, and wrestling, for God's sakes, was a male sport. So for her father to say that I don't want to limit my daughter in any way, that's incredible.
There was a point that I made in the interview that I want to just underscore here again, which is that so many of the names that we know or that we consider important historical figures or that we follow or that we celebrate are so connected to where in history, especially for Iranians, they've become famous. And she has this sort of double challenge, in terms of her. I would say she deserves so much more recognition than she's gotten so far. I mean, still a young woman, this, I think that, as she says, now all these Hall of Fames and are coming around. I think I would love her to become a household name in Iran. I mean, of all the countries in the world, wrestling being such a big deal in Iran. Here's a woman who was a pioneer, was the first winner for the U.S. I mean, she's basically the best in the world. But it's such an accident of history where not only is the sport not big, but at the time, right? And now it's become this huge sport. But also that, when there wasn't social media, you're depending on the traditional institutions, the newspapers, the media, etc. And of course, Iranian media in the 1989 and through the 1990s are not going to cover and celebrate and put on the front page a woman who's winning in wrestling for the U.S. And I just think today, regardless of what Iranian state media would or wouldn't do, Iranians around the world would know this person, right? Now they're getting to know her. But, if she was winning medals right now, even if it was for Team USA, she'd be, we would all be celebrating this.
Exactly.
It's a shame. I mean, I feel sad that I didn't know her name before this. So, but now is her time, and I hope she's just going to finally get the recognition that she deserves.
Afsoon Roshanzamir Johnston. Thank you again, Afsoon, for coming on. Thanks to the team here for being part of this episode. And also, I want to just once again give a shout out to Arash and Anita Fazilipur, who helped make this episode of Roqe possible. They're the founders of myterms.ca, a successful mortgage company in Ontario, Canada. They believe in educating their clients to understand every aspect of the financing being obtained, and they see each transaction through from the beginning to end to make sure that they're closed with ease. If you're looking for a mortgage in the Toronto or Greater Ontario region, go to myterms.ca. They are among the best, and both Arash and Anita make it a priority to give back to the Persian community. Big thanks to them and MyTerms, one word, myterms.ca.
Do you know what fitile pitch is?
Fitile pitch.
And she mentioned very quickly.
Yeah, it's a wrestling move.
It's
is it a headlock or something?
It's a kind of twisting legs. I don't know what.
Pitch.
I don't know how to say it in English, but yeah, you basically fold your opponent's foot, and you twist their body by twisting their foot. It's almost like then they spin.
Twist lock or something.
Twist lock or something.
Yeah,
I don't know the term in English, but because I competed in Farsi.
Yeah.
But you can use it in your regular conversation, like فلانیو فیتیله پیچ کردم means that you take care of something.
It means you took care of something.
You finish something.
Can I fitile pitch Reza?
I wish you would fitile pitch Reza.
By the way, Reza, were you a wrestler?
I was.
Somebody told me you were a wrestler back
Problem was I would take a ball to the...
Yeah. How would you use your sports ball with the... Thank you very much, Captain Reza, Groovy Shaya, and the fabulous Kian. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. Remember to catch up on all things Roqe, our episodes, our guests, our Roqe extras, like Roqe video moments, the Roqe funnies. It's all there. See photos of the Roqe team at roqemedia.com, ROQE media.com. And you can become a patron of our show there too. Press the support us button, and for $5 or $10 a month you become a patron. We really appreciate that. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together: producer Susan, Ponta the artist, Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Kian, Savvy Roham, Alay Merdad, sponsorship Sean, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya. And thank you to those of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. Mizun Bashir.